The way it was explained to me in the afterlife, Paisley Park is the deepest, darkest, MK Ultra, mind-bending, drug-selling facility, along with the X Center across the street. That is why it is described as a compound in the middle of nowhere. It's Paisley Park Prison. It's not a museum. It's a mausoleum, and he was tortured there.
At about 9:43 yesterday morning, we received a medical call at Paisley Park in Chanhassen.
The media asks us to believe that it was Andrew Kornfeld who made the 911 phone call at 9:43. When you look at the publicized transcript, it does show 9:43 as the call time. However, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office incident report shows us 9:10 a.m. Officer Todd Turpett was called in to assist another agency.
Chanhassen Fire, the Carver County Sheriff's Office, and Ridgeview Ambulance all responded to the call. That is our standard protocol, and it's not unusual at all.
It's not unusual. It's not unusual. It's not unusual.
It's not unusual that Kaylee and Shirley said you can cancel anybody going to Audubon, confirmed DOA. Still, the media reports that Ridgeview Ambulance and Chanhassen Fire were dispatched to Paisley Park on the report of a male down who was not breathing. That is not DOA. That is a male down who is not breathing. Here, the log at 9:43 says, one down, not breathing.
They found an unresponsive male in the elevator.
Before we get to the elevator, let's talk about what Andrew Kornfeld had to say about body position. Credited with calling 911, Andrew should know what position Prince was first found in, and he said Prince was on his left side. It looked like he just collapsed on his own. But his body was a little... What I think Andrew meant to say is that Prince's body was rigored. He said his decision to not start CPR was after observing clear signs of rigor throughout Prince's torso.
CPR was initially started, but was unsuccessful.
Andrew did a red-eye flight, was picked up at the airport by Prince representatives. When he arrived, Prince was not available. They went looking for Prince, couldn't initially find him. They saw the staff representatives apparently found him in an elevator, unconscious. One of the staff members started screaming.
Remember, Andrew Kornfeld ran to the elevator after he heard the scream. He said Prince was on his left side, and it looked like Prince collapsed on his own. So why does this published book tell us that Andrew and the two others guided Chief Johnson down a short hallway to the right? They found the elevator, and that the car's doors were closed. The doors split open immediately, and there he saw Prince. More than that, he reports his position as lying on his back, face up, against the back of the elevator with his arms down to his sides. Face up against the back of the elevator with his arms down to his sides, but the media blasts this photo all over the place. Even Sheila E. says the day that she went to Paisley Park that she heard from someone, not recalling who, that Kirk had found Prince in bed, dressed him, and moved him to the elevator. She said she asked Kirk if that was true and that he laughed and said no. It's imperative to understand that psychopharmacology was being practiced at Paisley Park, and Andrew Kornfeld was being one of the practitioners. He has a double identity. Here, Fritz Springmeier talks about the Illuminati using pharmacology for MK Ultra programming and mind, not just mind altering, but body altering as well. I'll attach this link so you can read that for yourself. That Andrew is a graduate of the University of California at Santa Cruz, where he studied both neuroscience and psychology. It says that he works as a practice consultant with his father at Recovery Without Walls. This is just one of his identities. Here, Andrew's being interviewed by Patrick Murphy, and he says, do you hold a medical degree like your dad? No, I don't. I'm pre-med. Okay, so you're working on it? Yeah, I'm working on it. I just took my MCAT exam. So those are the two identities for Andrew. I have a video here available, Andrew Kornfeld, 2 Identities. It's about 13 minutes long. You can go watch that. I get very much into detail about how his emails point to him living at Paisley Park since the fall of 2015. If you don't want to watch the video, what's super important to know is Dr. Schulenberg testified that he was contacted in the fall of 2015 by Kirk to see about helping out his boss. And he wasn't able to do that for whatever reason, and nothing came to fruition until April 7th. In that video for Andrew Kornfeld, we go back through his emails where you can see that there are emails and receipts that I believe point to the fact that he was living at Paisley Park. We talk about his Crohn's disease, why the receipt is full of honeydew and rice and fiber enhancing foods. Also, it's the same that 10/15/15, I think the receipt is the same date that there's an email saying, sorry, my shiz is everywhere at Paisley Park. So I believe that these identities, there's double identities for everybody. If you watch Dr. Schulenberg's video, you'll find the same thing. Kirk Johnson and Kirk Anthony Johnson, there are double identities for almost everyone, including Prince, because they use the words he and him. They don't use Prince Rogers Nelson. They'll use the word Prince once, Mr. Nelson once, Nelson Prince another time, and there are about 4 different identities. The whole fact that there is so much confusion in this investigation, it goes to show the depth of the cover-up. I almost forgot the most important part about Andrew. Because I believe he was living at Paisley Park, his emails show that he went back out to California for an interview. That is the reason that he took a red-eye flight back to Minnesota that evening. Marone and Kirk are said to have picked Andrew up at the airport. Then there's a bunch of missing time until 911 is called at 9:43, and I want to go over that with you.
What's in your backpack today? Will it take my blues away?
Dr. Kornfeld was contacted by Prince representatives on April 20th.
Here it says when Andrew did arrive, he was picked up by Kirk Johnson and Marone Bakir. The 3 of them then proceeded to Andrew's hotel. And here we are shown that Andrew checked into the hotel at 8:45. The drive from St. Paul Airport to Paisley Park is approximately 25 minutes. There were 2 outgoing calls from Kirk to Paisley Park. One to Prince's bedroom at 7:49 a.m. and a second to the kitchen at 7:51 a.m. So if Kirk and Andrew were dining leisurely from the hotel's breakfast menu after checking in at 8:45,
Just a good old boy.
Andrew has in his possession the Psychedelic Explorer's Guide to using LSD, and this author, James Fadiman, considers young Kornfeld a brilliant protege. When Andrew arrived at Paisley Park, he had drugs on his person. The media will tell you he came with bupropion, Suboxone to help treat Prince and his drug problem. However, the drugs that he brought with him, which he says he brought on his own accord, he brought in a baggie. So, after young Kornfeld is hearkened back to Paisley Park, he brings illegal drugs in a baggie, not a prescription bottle. He has a book about psychedelic journeys, LSD, mushrooms, all that stuff. And James Fadiman considers him, a brilliant guy. So you know that they're over there practicing a little bit more than music. They're at the airport. It's 6:30. It's a 25-minute drive to Paisley Park. So that's 7 a.m. We know that Kirk made 2 phone calls, one at 7:49 and one at 7:51. So from 6:30 to 7:49, Kirk, Marone, and Andrew's whereabouts are unaccounted for. Again, one version has them having breakfast together until Andrew says, oh golly, maybe we should go check on the patient. And the other story that the lawyer tells is that Andrew was dropped off at his hotel room and then picked up again and taken out to Paisley Park just before they found the body. However, if you listen to Chris Gaither's testimony, he said he was the former bodyguard. He said he had a hard time believing that Andrew never saw Prince before the 911 phone call. And I've never been to Paisley Park, but the way that I'm looking at it, the Recovery Without Walls pamphlet literature that Andrew would have brought with him was found in the Purple Rain room. And I believe it said that he was never in that room. But again, we're not even close to being done with the evidence. The difference between the residence and Paisley Park. Again, there's multiple investigations. One focuses on Prince Rogers Nelson at the residence, and the other one is Mr. Prince or Nelson Prince or whoever it was playing lookalike Marone Bakir. So let's focus on Andrew, the missing time, and check out a few things. Before I continue, I have to correct something I said earlier, that Andrew, Kirk, and Marone were only missing from 6:30 pickup at the airport to 7:49, but that's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was they were missing from the 6:30 pickup time to the 9:43 911 call because of the stories. The 7:49 and 7:51 phone calls were made by Kirk, but the investigation doesn't tell you where he was when he made those calls. However, when you read further, you find out that I think it's Judith Hill that confirms that Prince could only be reached on certain phones because there's a communication barrier. So the two phone calls that Kirk made were on what I believe was the CenturyLink phone where you can answer on a computer, but by the time that went to be investigated, those lines had been ported already by 427 to another place called Integris to disguise the fact of where the 749 and 751 phone calls went to, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm usually not. So just to clarify, picks them up at the airport at 6:30, and then nobody sees anybody until 9:43. Regarding the 7:49 a.m. phone call, it's interesting that this Thursday, April 7th text is also at 7:49 a.m., where Schulenberg and Kirk are talking about which gate they're going to meet at. Maybe that's why when Dr. Schulenberg texted Kirk at 8:15, just after the 7:49 and 7:51 phone calls, Dr. Schulenberg testified he texted Kirk, and he wanted to know if Kirk was still in town. And Kirk said, "I'm here with Prince, giving him something to take the edge off, and the other doctor is in town to help." That they were all at Paisley Park at 8:15, giving Prince something to take the edge off. Schulenberg said he went into work around 8:15 to finish documenting his notes. He said when he was done, he responded, "I'm here waiting for him, Prince, to wake up to give him something to take the edge off." Here, Kirk is returning that text to Schulenberg, and he says the other doctor is in town to help, so he can only be talking about Andrew Kornfeld, right? So even though Andrew's flight originated out of San Francisco at 12:19 a.m. and he arrived at 5:53 a.m., Andrew had no flight home. Wouldn't you think if Recovery Without Walls flew him out there on an emergency flight to save Prince, that his flight home would be prearranged as part of his itinerary?
Andrew had in his possession small pills. He was taken into custody and interviewed and told it was a criminal investigation. The Good Samaritan 911 call will provide statutory immunity.
There is no immunity because in this Prince investigation, no criminal charges, so he doesn't qualify there. And subsection 2, the person seeks medical assistance for another person who is in need of medical assistance. Prince Rogers Nelson had been dead since approximately 3 in the morning.
He already had been dead since 3 o'clock in the morning, and they wait for some doctor to get there at 9:30, and then doctors started trying to resuscitate him.
So Andrew is not calling on a person who needs medical assistance, provided the person who seeks the medical assistance is the first person to seek the assistance.
Staff representatives apparently found him in an elevator, unconscious. One of the staff members started screaming. Andrew heard the screams and went to the elevator, where he saw that Prince was unconscious.
Allegedly called 911 to dismiss the fact that he had several controlled substances on his person. Here, Kornfeld explained that he was not given much information about the meeting other than his father requesting him to come over to Minnesota and meet with Prince's staff. Here, Andrew says, yeah, so this is my dad right there. That's when he's being interviewed. So he pointed Howard out. So he was there.
Statutory immunity.
Well, I think it's weird that, it said that he disappeared off from the party, and nobody knew where he was the rest of the night. Somebody was trying to make sure I was home for this kind of stuff to happen. And they were saying the bodyguard that was saying that he disappeared and all of that, which really didn't make any sense because that's against, everything that happened that night is against how we're supposed to operate. It is to me, what it seems like to me is, because one, I know a pharmacy isn't going to mess up and give, fentanyl, because that's not just nothing that they are able to just disperse like that. You actually got to have the person who's in charge there sign off on it because of the type of medication like this, and then they have to account for every pill, and then they have to do all of that. So for him to magically just pop up with it and all of that, to me, that's a big red flag.